Son of man, I have made you a watchman. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. Ezekiel 33:7. In a world asleep at the wall, the space exists to sound the alarm, expose the darkness, and equip believers and seekers alike to see, speak, and stand. I'm your host, James Brosco, Christian, husband, father, veteran, and watchman. In this next series, we're going to slow down and take a harder look at where darkness is actually showing up in our culture, how it operates in everyday life, and why so many of us hesitate to respond when we see it. And this isn't about calling people out or creating noise. It's about learning how to recognize what's real so that we can speak with clarity when it matters and stand in the way that protects truth and people, especially those who are vulnerable. Because the truth is, the longer we live, the more we see. And the more we realize that silence isn't just a passive thing. It actually does something. It allows things to continue that shouldn't. And I think most of us sense that. But we don't always want to admit it, right? We don't want to admit that we see things that we should probably say something, and we don't. But it's also important to clarify this as well. When we talk about not staying silent, we're not talking about walking around pointing fingers at people and calling them sinners. That's not what this is, and that it's not what we are called to do. And Paul says that pretty plainly. He says, what do I have to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? 1 Corinthians 5. In other words, there's a responsibility within the body of believers to hold each other accountable, yes, but that's not the same thing as going out and trying to police everyone who doesn't share our faith. So we need to be careful not to confuse those two things, because what we're talking about here isn't labeling people, it's recognizing when something is harmful, when something is breaking people down, when something is clearly not right, and then choosing not to ignore it. So we don't need somebody to agree with our theology to see that something's destructive. We don't need to have shared belief to recognize when someone is being used, manipulated, or slowly being pulled into something that's going to cost them. And if we stay silent in those moments, especially when other people are being affected, then we've missed the responsibility completely. So let's start by walking through this the way it usually shows up in real life, where you may be in a situation. It could be work, it could be family, it could be church, it could be just in the community or hanging out with people that you know, and something just doesn't feel right or something's off. And it doesn't have to be extreme. In most cases, it's not extreme. It's subtle. Maybe something's said that crosses a line, or it's behavior that's just a little off. It's a pattern that we start noticing, and you catch it, you see it. But almost just as quickly, we start talking ourselves out of saying anything. And we think, maybe I'm reading too much into it, or it's just not my place, or I don't want to create a problem where there isn't one. And if we're really honest, sometimes it's just, I don't want the hassle of it. So we let go. We see something off, we let go. So the real question is, what do we do the next time it happens? Because things don't just stay where they are. They either move towards good or they drift away from it. And that's just the facts. Scripture doesn't treat silence as neutral. It never did. And that's something we have to come to terms with. When Paul talks about the reality of the world we're in, he doesn't describe it as a place where everything is just naturally stable. He says very clearly that we are dealing with something deeper, something that operates beneath what we see. Our struggle, he says, is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the forces of this darkness. Ephesians 6:12. Now, that's not language we use casually today, but the point is straightforward. There is an active movement away from truth, away from goodness, And it doesn't require dramatic movements to advance. It often moves through small compromises or silences, small decisions to look the other way. And that's where this can get personal, because we tend to think of responsibility in terms of action, what we did, what we said, what we chose to do. But Scripture also holds us accountable for what we failed to do. This is the whole message of Ezekiel and becoming the watchman. This whole passage, everything that we believe in on standing the wall, is based on this concept. The watchman isn't judged for causing the danger. He's judged for seeing it and not warning anybody. And that's a different category altogether. So let's talk about something practical. Think about a situation where someone is being pulled slowly into something destructive. It could be alcohol, drugs, it could be addiction, it could be a relationship, something that's clearly unhealthy. It could be a pattern of behavior that's starting to isolate them or change them. And if you live long enough, you've seen it or you've experienced it. And usually it doesn't happen overnight. It builds over time. And along the way, there are people, friends, family, coworkers who notice. They see the change. They sense something is off. But nobody wants to be the one that steps in, because stepping in means risking the relationship. It means possibly being misunderstood. It means having a conversation that might not go well. So what do? We stay quiet. And then later, when things fall apart, everyone looks back and says, man, I knew something was off. I should have said something. And that's that part we don't like to sit with. Well, Jesus speaks directly into this in a way that's really easy to overlook. In Matthew's gospel, when he talks about sin and correction, he doesn't frame it as optional. He says, if your brother sins, go and show him his fault. Matthew 18:15. Now it's not about condemnation. It's about restoration. It's about caring enough to step in before something takes hold, takes a deeper root. But again, that requires something from us. It requires courage, clarity. It requires a willingness to be uncomfortable. And because of that, that's where most of us hesitate. And I want to be careful, because there's a mistake people make when they hear something like this. They think the answer is to become aggressive or confrontational about everything, to call out every flaw, every issue or misstep. And that's not what we're talking about. There's a difference between being reactive and being responsible. Being reactive is driven by emotion, by frustration, sometimes even by pride. It's about proving a point or winning an argument. Being responsible is quiet, but it's also more deliberate, because it's rooted in truth. It cares. It asks, what needs to be said here, and how do I say it in a way that actually helps? That's such a harder path, because it takes discernment, not just reaction. St. Augustine spoke about correction as an act of love, not superiority. He said, if you truly care about someone, you don't ignore what harms them, but you also don't approach them in a way that hardens them. You approach them in a way that invites them back. What a beautiful sentiment. That's a different posture than what we see in today's world, isn't it? Where everything is either silence or attack. And the Christian response is neither. It's the truth spoken with responsibility. Now, you and I both know the hardest corrections to speak are those who are most dear to us. Our husbands or wives, son or daughter, the best friend that we have. And we know that because we risk something. And that's also why St. Augustine's approach is the only approach, because it's done through love. Now, let's be honest, that doesn't mean it's going to be successful, but it also means that you don't stay silent, that you take on that responsibility willingly, because you know there's a cost involved if you don't. But silence doesn't just affect others, it shapes us. Every time we see something and choose not to engage, something in us adjusts, and what once maybe stood out at us begins to blend in. And what used to bother us, now we start feeling normal about it. And Paul talks about this process when he describes how people become darkened in their understanding. He says it that way in Ephesians 4:18. That doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually through repeated choices that move us away from clarity. And one of those choices is silence. And I've seen this in my own life. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. There's been moments where I knew I should say something, and I didn't. And in that moment, yeah, I had reasons. And I said to myself, they sounded good. They were justified. But later, looking back, I could see it more clearly. It wasn't wisdom at all. It was hesitation. And sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's just not wanting to deal with the fallout. And that's something every one of us has to examine honestly. So the question isn't whether you've been silent, because you have. I have. Everyone has. The question is, what do you do with that realization? Do you justify it? Do you explain it away? Or do we let it teach us something? Because this is where the call of the Watchman becomes real. It's not about standing on a literal wall. It's about recognizing where you've been placed in your family, your workplace, your community, your church, and understanding that your awareness carries responsibility, not to control, not to fix everything, but to speak when it matters. There's also something important to say about those who are wounded, because this isn't just about calling out the problem. This is about protecting people. Silence doesn't just allow wrongdoing to continue. It often leaves the vulnerable without a voice. And that's where this becomes a matter of justice. Throughout Scripture, there's a consistent emphasis on defending those who can't defend themselves. Isaiah said, "Learn to do good, seek justice, and correct." That's practical. It means stepping in when something isn't right, especially when someone else is bearing the cost of it. And again, that requires something from us. So let's bring this to a close in a way that's actually useful. If you're listening to this, don't walk away with a sense that, okay, I should probably speak up more, please. That doesn't help you. Instead, think about one situation, not 10, not a category, one situation where you've seen something you know isn't right in your own life, in someone else's life, in a friend, a family member, somebody you work with, somebody at your church, somebody you love and care about. And you've held back. And then ask yourself two questions. The first question is, what am I actually afraid of in this situation? And be honest about it. Is it rejection? Conflict? Being wrong? Losing something? Because all of those are real responses. And we're not taken away from that. We're not trying to say that doesn't exist. The second question is, what is the cost of continuing to stay silent? And not for you, but for the situation, for the person involved, for the direction things are heading in. And then sit with that. Sit with those two questions, because that's where clarity starts to form. I remember a little girl who was the sweetest girl, who grew up in a good home. Sisters loved her, mother loved her. And she had all the possibilities, all the potential. And she started going down a bad road, and nobody said anything. Because they didn't want those things to come back at them. They didn't want the rejection or the arguments or the hard feelings. And at 19, she lost her life. We protected ourselves. And she was my daughter. When you see it, you'll know. But please ask yourself those two questions. None of that is meant to put someone in a bad situation or to make you feel guilty. It's to bring awareness out, show you that truth is so important. And that's what the Watchman's Call is all about. We're going to go deeper than this in this series. We're going to get more specific. We're going to talk about where this shows up in our culture and how it operates and what it actually looks like to respond in a way that's grounded in truth. But for now, this is where we start. Not with everything, just one place where you choose not to stay silent. Thanks for listening, and God bless. And you can find us on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Patreon. Or you can listen directly from our website. You can find our website link in the podcast description. This is the Watchman's Call.